Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes a pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's fact. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 198 of the Last Round Podcast. We apologize. We took a week off last week. We had some scheduling conflicts that occurred during the week, but we are back this week, like I said, for episode 198. So let's jump straight back into it. Fight reviews. Not last Saturday, right? 2 Saturdays ago, the 15th of October, right? Was it 2 Saturdays ago or last Saturday?
15th?
2 Saturdays ago, right?
Yeah, well, it will be. Yeah, if you include this Saturday coming, yeah.
Yeah, because we did take a week off last week. The 15th of October from the O2 Arena in London on Sky Sports and ESPN in the United States. Clarissa Shields gets the unanimous decision win and becomes the IBF, WBA, WBC, and WBO middleweight champion of the world with her victory over Savannah Marshall by scores of 97-93 twice and 96-94. All right, Mike. We've been talking about this for about a good solid year, and we were each on different sides of the fence in terms of picking the winner. What happened to Marshall? You were sticking with her. You thought she was going to be able to knock her out. What happened here?
Good question. I think Clarissa Shields just a bigger, stronger opponent, and she kind of shocked her, I think, coming out so quickly and starting so fast. And then I kind of stand with the fact that I think the rounds are too short. You know, it lets, people like Clarissa just come in. She can throw like quite a few punches and, essentially steal the rounds without, having to really, select her shots and stuff like that. I mean, it was a good fight, and just the whole card itself, like we're going to touch on in a minute. I just thought it was disappointing that we didn't get really any knockdowns. I think I wrote down a stat before we knew last week that we weren't going to be doing the show. I think it was that weekend, if I remember correctly, there was 13 women's fights in the whole of Saturday the 15th of October on BoxRec. 3 finishes. 10 of them went to the scorecards. One of those was a retirement on this card. Caroline Dubois got a knockout on this card, and I believe there was a knockout or something like that, or a TKO on another card. Which just goes to show, in my opinion, the women's boxing at the minute just doesn't have what we want to see. You go to watch a lot of these fights because they're gladiatorial. You want to see knockdowns, you want to see knockouts, you want to see blood. We do at times enjoy, the skill and finesse of certain fighters, and one of those is someone we're going to talk about later in the show, is Lomachenko. If he goes 12 rounds, it's a good 12 rounds because of the style that he has. But these are the sort of fights where you watch the first couple of rounds and you can sort of see like, oh, Shields is probably going to win this, and you can go off, grab some food, grab a drink, and come back and catch the 10th round, and then see the scorecards come out. So I think doing these cards isn't good, in my opinion, and I think they kind of need to slow down and stop pushing it on us until we have some, women's fighters that are, equal to the sort of standard that we see in the UFC, because, nearly every single card just goes the full distance, whether it be 6 rounds, 8 rounds, or 10 rounds, and very rarely do you even get a knockdown, never mind a knockout.
I don't think that Marshall didn't try for the knockout or a knockdown. I do think that she tried, and she got some good shots in. And this is also backed up by the fact that Shields, after the fight in interviews, at least in one that I saw, but I'm sure in another, and she said a couple times at different points, but she did say this was the hardest fight she's ever had, and that's the hardest she's ever been hit. So she felt it. But she took the shots and didn't go down. And she was able to, like you said, I agree in terms of the 2-minute rounds. It definitely, obviously we're just going to speculate, but if there was 3-minute rounds, that extra minute throughout those what was it, 10 rounds? Do you think it would have been a different outcome? Do you think that extra minute, those 60 seconds throughout those 10 rounds, which is what, an extra 10 minutes in the fight in total, would give Marshall that enough opening to take the victory?
Really hard to say. And going off that performance, probably not. As much as I wanted Savannah to win, probably not. Just because, I think the scorecards kind of showed you that Shields won it, pretty convincingly because she just started so fast. Maybe Savannah, if she'd come out with a slightly different game plan, I would have liked her to kind of throw a little bit more. I just think the thing about Shields in that division is just she's so much bigger and stronger. Like if you just looked at, Savannah, she was taller, but Shields was just so much thicker. If you just look at like her shoulders and stuff like that, which is Savannah was surprisingly is the heavier handed fighter, but Shields is just so thick. And I think which probably helps her absorb the punches, like she did. Savannah did connect with a few good shots, but I don't think there was, I think maybe one point where she kind of rocked Shields a tiny little bit. But, Savannah just didn't really get a chance to, jump on her, or she couldn't jump on her just because, the style that, Shields had during that fight. It's just disappointing that there isn't really anybody for either of them to fight apart from each other. I looked at the middleweight division afterwards, and it's a complete and utter fucking shit show, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not like we've never talked about that before in women's boxing. It's
in third place in the world rankings. You have someone called Mapuli Ungambe. I think you pronounce it. Third best fighter in the world in that division. 9, 8, and 3. That just kind of shows you, and taking nothing away from Claressa Shields, she can only fight
right
people that are in her division and stuff like that. But the fact that we call her a GWO, she's not really. Come on, it's got to be Serrano or Taylor because she's dominating divisions that have literally nobody in it. I mean, the girl that's in 5th place, 3 wins, 2 losses, and a draw, and she's the 5th best fighter in that division in the world.
No, right. I mean, we're kind of beating a dead horse here. It's been like this for years. When has the women's division really had a sufficient amount of talent that they could, at least for a good amount of years, kind of rotate and fight each other in a sense and really keep that consistent attention span of the fan? It's never really been like that. There's always been spurts of fighters who kind of have the bigger profile in terms of fame. Like Mia St. John, she was one. But I think she didn't she do like Playboy or something?
Yeah.
So, but she was also a fighter. So she got a lot of attention as well. And then, you had Ann Wolfe. She was a monster. She when she was fighting in there, she was ridiculous. But there's never been a talent pool nearly as much as the men, and that's a fact. And people, and people can get upset and say, "Oh, we don't give the credit," and that we're not giving like that. That's not what we're doing at all. We're literally stating the fact. That's what's happening, and it's unfortunate for fighters like Claressa Shields, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, Savannah Marshall. Just to name those few. It's unfortunate for them. I mean, luckily, all 4 of them are doing well in a sport with a female sport that doesn't have, like I said, the talent pool for them to make the money that the men are. But they're all doing well enough financially because they're with the right promoter, or the promoter that they're aligned with is helping to raise their profile, getting some decent paydays, decent exposure. So it works out for them. But like you mentioned, that fighter who's ranked 3rd in the world, where is she at? She's not getting that exposure, and I'm sure she's not getting that type of money. But I mean, the record, 9, 8, and 4 or something like that, whatever you said. It's unfortunate, but kind of talking about the GWO here, how Claressa Shields is self-professing how she has been doing that. I mean, if she thinks that, let her think that. It helps her profile. It helps her image. It gets people to like her, hate her. But people remember her name. And is it really her fault that her as a fighter, that there's nobody else around her who could compete with her? It's not her fault. There's nobody else. The talent pool's not there. And going back to that GWOAT conversation, if you want to look at somebody like Amanda Serrano, who, what is she, eight divisions?
Something like that,
yeah. I know we talk about the talent pool, but even that's still an accomplishment. 8 divisions, that's ridiculous. I mean, who's Manny Pacquiao in the men? So if you want to compare resumes like that, then okay, what do you give more weight to? Somebody like Serrano, who's been a champion in 8 separate divisions. The only other person who's done something like that is Manny Pacquiao in the men, if you want to compare in terms of boxing. And I know people are going to say, oh, well, females, you can't compare the two. It's male and female. Like, okay, well, you can stand by that opinion. But regardless, that's impressive. That is impressive. But Shields has been showing since she turned pro. She was an Olympian. I mean, she won the gold medal, right? She was a gold medalist in the Olympics, and then she became a pro, and she became a better, like we talked about levels. Like, okay, you can be a great amateur fighter, but when you get to the pros, it's a different. Like, what does Mayweather say? Or you can be the best fighter in the gym, but I'm the best fighter under the lights. That's true, and Shields has been proving that, and she proved it against Marshall with this victory. So as of right now, she's still young. She's still gonna keep fighting. I'm assuming she hasn't said anything about retirement, which is, I'd be surprised if she does, but I don't think she is. But she's still gonna keep going and try to see what she can do. I mean, don't be surprised if these two fighters, Marshall and Shields, fight a total of 3 or 4 times throughout the rest of their careers. Don't be surprised about that, because who else is there, right? There's nobody else. There really is nobody else. That's why she went to MMA. That's why Shields. I think she still has a PFL deal, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, she has. I think I just read today. I think she's having one more boxing fight, and then she's going back to the PFL, I believe. But yeah, they're definitely two fighters that need each other. They need each other for the big fights, the big paydays, and like you say, I wouldn't be surprised if we see at least 2 or 3 fights between them. They both go away, have 1 or 2 more fights, and then all roads lead back to each other, because it's the big.
Have Marshall come to the United States.
Yeah, exactly. Have one in the US. Probably where Carisha's from, and then. In all honesty, you kind of want Marshall to win that, right? To make the third worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that would make the interest in both of them a lot. It would increase it tenfold, because people are like, oh, now they split 2 fights just like any fighters. Okay, let's watch the rubber match, the trilogy. You're right.
It's like it'd be the equivalent of what we're going to talk about probably later is Chisora Fury. Like, if Clarissa wins the first 2, do we really need to see the third? Right. Out of this one. But yeah, I think we summed it up there, really. It's a good win for Shields, and I think Savannah goes away. Hopefully she can, perfect her style a little bit more, come back, and we see another fight between them, because it's really the biggest fight for both of them. Wherever Shields or Marshall go, it's several steps lower than those two fighting each other.
Now, in a rematch, obviously they're going to look at trying to just have them headline their own card like they did over there. But if they do, like, do you think it's in the United States, since the market's a little bit different, that they should be on a male card as the co-main event? You have 2 males who are, world title fight, something, pretty significant names. But then you also, in the co-main event, you put Marshall Shields rematch. You think that's better?
I mean, I think it's big enough to do its own. But in all honesty, I don't see anything wrong with them doing that. Doing like just a normal card like we've seen before, where it's a mixture of both. And then also, if that's on something huge, which gathers more eyeballs than it would anyway. It did gather a lot, like 2 million, right? They said Sky Sports, which was good. I believe they made it, free for all. You didn't even need Sky Sports. I believe. I think you could just log on and watch it instead of having to pay for it if you didn't have it, which was good because it brings more eyeballs to the sport. So yeah, I think it could be co-main on a big male card just to stick it. You could even stick it on like an AJ card, an AJ undercard, or
Yeah.
Well, not AJ because they're with Boxer, but they could stick it on some like a Joe Joyce, have a heavyweight fight, have that as like the co-main, something like that, just to bring more eyeballs. Because I wonder what it would be interested to see, what it did in the US, because there's 3 US fighters on there, but we had a whole host of different events going on that day with college football and baseball and NFL that weekend. So it would have been interesting to see what kind of figures it did with 3 out of the 4 people in the main and co-main were from
Right.
this side of the world. So
yeah, but like I said, these 2 will be fighting at least 3 times throughout the next the rest of their careers, because like you said, the talent pool is not there, and it was an entertaining fight. And I think Marshall, even though she did lose, she wasn't knocked out or anything. It wasn't like crazy outclassed, but there was enough there like, oh, you can rematch. We will see it. And in the co-main event, Alicia Bumgardner gets the hard-fought split decision win over Michaela Mayer and becomes the IBF, IBO, WBC, and WBO and ring super featherweight champion by scores of 96-95 twice and 97-93, which was for Mayer, I believe. I think I picked Mayer. I picked Mayer in the couple of weeks ago when we previewed this fight, and you picked Bumgardner. And it was a close fight. It was closer than the main event. It was a split decision. I mean, what do you think? Do you agree with this? Even though you did pick Bumgardner, do you agree with this split decision?
I mean, it was super hard to score, and I did post on our social that it's one of those where we kind of discussed this with Andy Clark a long time ago. If you could put like energy bars above the fighters' heads, Mayer would have been taken off like a little bit each time with those jabs. But then when Bumgardner would connect, there's so much more power behind that would probably take off, a lot more energy than, just those multiple jabs. And then I think CompuBox actually put the stats out, and, Bumgardner wasn't far behind, or if she may have even been ahead of actually the amount of punches she's connected with, which kind of one of those things where your eyes kind of fool you. Because you'd have thought that the way that Mayer's style and the jab that she uses, that she was going to take it, but I've seen Mayer so many times now, like either live and on just on TV. It's the same thing over and over and over again. She just uses the fact that she's so tall, that reach, very amateur style, very, very boring, very safety first, just working off the jab. And it's all one speed. She never mixes it up, like comes in fast, comes in hard, comes in a little bit slower, stuff like that, just to keep their opponent guessing. And yeah, she's just not great to watch, to be honest with you. Kind of good to see Bumgardner win because she's so much more heavy-handed. She has a good flashy style, and I think she'll do wonders for the sport, because she talks really well, she looks really good, but at the same time, she's got that little bit of spite in her, where she wants to knock people out. She's also heavy-handed, and she'll give you that little bit of drama, the weigh-ins at the press conferences. She's not scared to, she kept putting those pictures up of, she was walking Mayer as a dog, stuff like that, to trying to get a little bit of drama involved in the fights, which sells. We like that, and hopefully,
right.
That'll work as well for the women's side and attract more viewers on there. But super hard to score, though. Honestly, it was super hard to score, because you could see that just on social media. Like, some people had Bumgardner, some people had Mayer.
Yeah.
Just the scorecards themselves. Some people had it close, and other people had Bumgardner winning it easy or Mayer winning it easy.
It was you're right. It was a tough fight to score. And also, like you just described, Mayer was you talk about like the energy bar in terms of like a video game or something. Mayer getting her with the jab, and and shots like that, but Bumgarner with the more powerful shots. That's a great way to describe how different judges, and not just official judges like those 3 judges, but just how people look at a fight. Like, are you going to give it to Mayer because Mayer, she might not have had the more powerful shots, the stronger shots, but she connected. She was making contact and she was scoring points. But Bumgarner, when she would throw and she would connect, there was a lot of power behind it. So like you said, it's like that energy bar in a video game. And that's what happens in boxing. And you talked about all these different scores all over social media right after the fight. We're all over the place. Some people said Mayer took it. Some people said Bumgarner took it. Some people said it was it was a close fight. Bumgarner ran away with it easily. But you look at the scores. 2 of the scores were 96-95 for Bumgarner, and the other one was 97-93 for Mayer. So, and sometimes we see that, and it's like, we talk about, you didn't see that fight, or people complain about the judging and this and that, especially in more high-profile fights like Canelo fights and stuff like that. But this fight really, I would assume you would agree with me, but those 3 scores really tell the story of that whole fight. It was all over the place in terms of, who won. Like, is the guy, the lone judge who scored at 97-93 for Mayer, is he right? Or are the 2 judges, just because there was more of them out of the 3, who scored at 96-95 for Bumgarner, are they right? It's all subjective. These aren't robots. These are people who are watching this fight. But, going back, like we were talking about Shields Marshall in a rematch, I think it's gonna be the same thing for these 2. I know Bumgarner wants to unify. I think there's one more title out there that she wants, and she wants to be undisputed. But I mean, who else is really out there to fight? They're going to rematch again. They're going to rematch again next year. Bumgarner is going to come and try to get that undisputed, try to get all the titles under her belt. No pun intended. And then Top Rank is going to put Mayer back out there, sometime next year, maybe in the first quarter or so, springtime, to try to get another win under her belt, get her back in the victory column. And then maybe in the summer, they're going to put them against each other again. Maybe in the United States, or they're going to try to coordinate with a Shields Marshall rematch. Maybe they're going to do it all over again, but over here in the United States. Maybe New York? Maybe New York, maybe LA. I feel like that fight, those 2 fights together on the same card, would actually sell pretty well in LA. What do you think?
I think that Bumgarner's going to take the belt. She's going to run off fight. Is it Hung-Min Choi?
Yeah, I believe so.
For undisputed, and then luckily enough, she signed with Eddie Hearn, who's the weight above Katie Taylor.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Undisputed at super feather, undisputed at lightweight. That sells, right?
You know what? You're right. I forgot about that. And Eddie Hearn's thinking about that. I mean, because Matchroom wasn't involved in this fight, right? Eddie Hearn wasn't involved in this card. So when Bumgarner got the split decision win, I know Eddie was tweeting, and I'm sure he was very happy, because you're right. That lays the groundwork and the foundation for Bumgarner to become undisputed and fight Katie Taylor all in the span of next year, 2023.
Because the fight was supposed to be, Katie Taylor fights soon. And then, we were looking at the Amanda Serrano rematch. But unfortunately, Eddie Hearn's just entered in a lawsuit against Jake Paul. So I'm sure we probably won't be seeing Jake Paul letting Amanda Serrano fight Katie Taylor anytime soon.
You know what, though? You're right, though. I agree. There's a high chance that's going to hinder the possibility there. But I feel like, I don't know. I feel like Jake Paul or Amanda Serrano's going to be like, oh, man, we can't fight because you guys are in a lawsuit. I feel like Jake Paul would try to make it go away. Like, okay, let me make it go away, and then I'll get you that rematch. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see an apology later down the line from Jake Paul, and all that will get dropped, I'm sure.
Because even Glenn Feldman, the Las Vegas judge, it was reported that he's also suing Jake Paul.
Like
And
10 million.
you know what the crazy thing about that is that there's a high likelihood that Glenn Feldman spoke to the Nevada State Athletic Commission, like the executive officer, the executive director, and told them like, "Hey, this is what I want to do. So I'm just giving you guys a heads up." And they probably told him, "Yeah, go ahead." You know, like, we're not going to sue him as a commission, but you can sue him on your own. So, I don't want to say this is happening, but would you think there's a kind of like a shadow blessing from the Nevada State Athletic Commission? Is it no, is it New York? Or what are we? Yeah, New York, right? The New York Commission? Because the fight was in New York.
Yeah, that fight was for the Katie Taylor Amanda Serrano.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know, because Feldman, he's more in Vegas, but I mean, obviously, wherever her services are needed, and if he's licensed there and all that. But yeah, I that lawsuit will hinder the rematch, but I think it'll still happen. Eddie Hearn's the type of guy, especially, what's on his Twitter bio? It says family first, business close second, or something like that. I think even if there is a lawsuit, he would still make that fight. He just wouldn't deal with Jake Paul. He'd be like, "Oh no, you're going to negotiate or communicate with my number 2 or Frank Smith or something like that." No, yeah, I still think that fight's gonna happen. Let's just see how these lawsuits pan out. But I still think, and I think Jake Paul just, being from the world he is, he was just saying it to get publicity, and I'm sure he was like bothered. He's like, "Oh, they corrupt and they cheated or something," and maybe he didn't think that they were gonna sue him. And Eddie Hearn and Glenn Feldman are just like, "All right, we'll call your bluff." And I'm sure if I was Jake Paul, I'd be like, "Ah, damn." They actually took me seriously. The guy's a troll. The guy's a troll, but let's see if he, like you said, I'm sure he'll give an apology, but actually, I don't know. The guy's crazy. He's all over the place. So we will see. Moving on. Was this last Saturday or 2 Saturdays ago? No, it was on the same day. It was just at night over here in the United States on the 15th of October from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. Deontay Wilder returns since his last defeat against Tyson Fury in their trilogy, in their third fight, and makes an early night, with the first round KO over his sparring partner, who has been a sparring partner for quite a few fights, Robert Helenius, who takes the 4th loss of his career. I mean, I think we both picked Wilder. It's just regardless of him losing against Tyson Fury, 2 out of the 3 times, and the first one being a draw and all that. Wilder does have scary power. He does have scary power. I didn't think it was going to be a first round thing, because Wilder usually takes a couple rounds to really kind of find you, but it was an easy night. On pay-per-view. It was reported to do between like 75 and 77,000. And transparency. Rick Glazer's been on the show, who's been on the show before. He's the one who initially put the report out, or whoever his source is, that it was 77,000. And then Dan Raphael of formerly ESPN, who now is on his own and freelances, he reported that it was approximately 75,000. So it was somewhere around that range for the pay-per-view buys. But like you said, this was on Fox, and Fox seemingly has told PBC, from the inferences from what we could tell, and a lot of boxing fans can tell, that Fox has told Al Heyman and PBC, "Hey, we're not going to put any more free fights on our network. So whatever fight you bring us, it has to be pay-per-view, because we need to try to make our money back." So I don't think they made any money for this fight, which they haven't really for a while on the PBC side. It's difficult. The pay-per-view market's hard. I mean, the only people who are making pay-per-view money and able to sell is it just Canelo in the United States, right? He stands alone, right? There's nobody
Yeah,
else.
yeah. I mean, it's
Nobody else.
Yeah, it's hard because a lot of the figures that come out, they're overinflated.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like massively because they want Javante Davis and other people like that to look more of a star than they are. It's embarrassing for them to come out and say like, oh, it did like 50,000, 60,000, and 70,000. We'll release to the media that it did like 200,000 just to cover it. So it's hard. We're so far behind. Those Floyd Mayweather days. Those Floyd and Pacquiao days seem to be long gone. We've got Anthony Joshua, Canelo, Tyson Fury. Probably the only ones that really sell.
Yeah. But Wilder, going back to to the actual fight, Wilder gets the first round KO. Seemingly in the next 6 to 8 months, it's going to be him versus Ruiz, right? On pay-per-view, on likely Fox pay-per-view.
Cinco de Mayo weekend.
Canelo? They're gonna have a Canelo weekend?
He's injured till September, right?
Well, I thought I saw an Eddie Hearn when they had the Mexico card this past weekend, I believe. I think Eddie Hearn said that he had talked to Eddie Reynoso, and Eddie Reynoso had said that they were looking to come back in May still. So maybe he changed his mind. So we won't know until probably maybe February if Canelo wants to come back in May, even though he did say in his last fight, well, his victory over Triple G in their third fight, that he needs a break and he needs surgery or something, and he's going to be out until September, probably next year. We're going to have to wait and see. He could say it and people are like, oh, okay, we're going to plan that. But that Canelo and Eddie Hearn and Matchroom have a hold on Cinco de Mayo weekend in Vegas, in Texas, maybe in Mexico, in multiple venues in like 3 different cities. So we're not going to get a confirmation of that until maybe February or March, or at least some type of information. But a Wilder Ruiz fight, would that be in LA? You would think, right? Staples Center or Crypto Arena?
I think it should, but Wilder seems to have this relationship with New York, right? He kind of said that after the fight when he knocked him out about coming back here, and I think every time he goes to New York, he always seems to get like a spectacular knockout. So he just seems to have some type of relationship with the East Coast. But I think to bring in, like a big amount of like paying fans,
yeah,
Southern California with the Ruiz.
And you know what's crazy? It's Hollywood, and there's a lot of Wilder's friends with a lot of celebrities. A lot of hip hop artists, a lot of rappers, a lot of athletes. They'll come out to that fight, a heavyweight fight between 2 former heavyweight champions of the world, a Mexican fighter with a huge Mexican fan base in the Southern California area, in the LA area, who's from essentially Southern California.
First and only Mexican heavyweight.
Yeah,
champion.
regardless of what you think of him, he's in the history books. And then Wilder, who's one of the biggest punchers in the heavyweight division, probably of all time. I think that fight belongs in LA. I know Andy Ruiz would likely 99% have the fan support because of the huge Latino population. But in terms of more bang for your buck, I think LA is where it should be instead of New York. But like you said, Wilder does have a relationship with the New York, Brooklyn, Barclays Center. So I can see like, oh no, I want it over here. It's more neutral ground, But more bang for your buck, Ruiz, Wilder in LA, Crypto.com Arena. Sign me up. Sign me up. I think that Wilder he knocks him out. I think he does knock out Andy Ruiz. But it's an intriguing fight. It's an intriguing fight because they're both former champions. They're not coming off, but like, they took some pretty significant losses, especially Wilder. And they're both under the same team, PBC, Al Heyman. Put them together. put them together and let's see. You know, in terms of heavyweight matchup, I think that at least for the PBC, that would do pretty decent in terms of like a profit, money on return, you know, and it's all their money. Both of their fights in house, you know. It's not like while they're fighting Tyson Fury and they have to split with Top Rank, or while they're fighting Anthony Joshua, they have to split with Matchroom. No, these two, you know, have decent fan bases that could bring in the fights, bring in the buys, and, you know, at least probably crack 200,000 buys, I would think, right?
Yeah, I think that would do good numbers. Just Ruiz in Southern California against, you know, Wilder, because we know like how devastating, but at the same time, he can be caught, you know, and in that sort of fight, I could see Wilder getting dropped, but coming back to knock him out. In that,
maybe, yeah. It's just Ruiz. It's just so it's so crazy to see that he's just. You look at him and you're just like, oh no, he's not anything special, but like he has fast hands, and that those fast hands have power. So, you know, like he kind of throws off these combos, and they're just like, what the hell? Where did that come from? So, yeah, I don't doubt Ruiz. Obviously, he's had a chance. I'm not saying that, but I just think that Wilder's he's shown, besides the only person besides Fury, everybody else has went down from that equalizer, that right hand. You know, and I think that Ruiz he's not 6'9". He doesn't move like Fury. And I think Wilder it's just gonna be too much for him. You know, Ruiz might be winning a couple like the round in terms of outboxing him, but that's kind of Wilder's MO. He loses the actual rounds, but he always finds you and knocks you out and wins the fight anyways. So, you know, I think that happens next, maybe in, what do you think, March, April?
Yeah, I guess if the rumors are that Canelo may come back and they don't know for sure whether they're, you know, going to get that date and going to be the only big fight that weekend, then yeah, just go slightly earlier, and then, you know, you don't have to compete with Canelo.
Yeah, they're gonna definitely wait to see if Canelo fights that weekend in May. If he doesn't, they're gonna try to get that weekend for Ruiz Wilder. But if they do, they're gonna have to have that fight either in Vegas or LA. You know, you're gonna do Cinco de Mayo weekend. You can't really do Cinco de Mayo in New York. It's not the same. You got to do it. First choice is LA. Second choice, Vegas. Then Texas. You know?
Yeah.
So we will see. Also on that card, Caleb Plant returns since his only loss against Canelo Alvarez, and gets the 9th round knockout over Anthony Durrell. Honestly, that was a great punch because it was in the middle of an exchange, and I think it was a left hook. That was a sweet punch, man. I give a ton of credit to Plant for that, because they were exchanging, and, you know, by this round it looked like, oh, okay, it's probably going to go to a decision. You know, it is what it is, and Plant just floored him. And then, you know, Plant did the whole where he's kind of throwing dirt on him and a shovel, and then people were upset about that. And, you know, I mean, I get it. You know, it could offend you, but these guys were going back and forth leading up to the fight, and Durrell was talking major shit on Plant, you know, saying that, oh, he was beat up by a middleweight in sparring and this and that. And, you know, they had emotions, and he kind of, you know, some people were like all offended, like, oh, he shouldn't have done that. You know, he needs to apologize. Like, well, his adrenaline was up. Why don't you go tell him he needs to apologize? Tell him to his face. You know? Yeah, some people were offended by that, but it's sports. What do you want to do? You know, these guys are all emotional after a win, you know, upset or bothered or happy, excited, all into one. And if some guy, and if you're fighting somebody, you're punching them in the face and you beat them, and they were talking crap about you the whole time, you're not going to be like, oh, well, sometimes that happens, because sometimes it's just like planned, like, oh, you know, we do it for publicity. But these guys really didn't like each other. You could tell. they really did not like each other. So, it is what it is. But are we going to see Plant versus Benavidez now?
I hope so, because where else do they go? They put it off so many times. It's another one where they have like genuine beef. That's a great, unbelievable performance there from Caleb Plant, because he was kind of known more of a snooze fest, wasn't he? He was a lot more of a boxer. Kind of be very slick, come in, hit you a few times, and boom, he's back out of range, which was kind of what he did at the beginning. And there was a few boos coming from the crowd, to be honest with you. And then he just unleashes that, one of the oldest combos in the book, really. Like a left to the body, and then a left like uppercuts, come hook, which put literally turned Dirrell's off button. And he was out. Great finish from him. And let's just hope now that we see Plant a little bit more active. And in there with Benavidez, I think it's probably the only fight we want to see. But with PBC, sometimes they don't always give you the fights that you want. They keep it in house, and you kind of cook it and cook it and cook it and cook it. But for me, that's the only one that I want to see. I don't want to see Benavidez in with anybody else. I don't really want to see Plant in with anybody else. Whilst Canelo looks like he's out for a bit, just Plant's already fought him. Benavidez get another win against Plant, and then start calling out Canelo. Start making some noise.
Right. I mean, who do you think would? What's your take on a Plant Benavidez fight potentially?
It's just a purely like boxer against some more of a brawler. Benavidez so far has kind of really relied on the fact that he's just enormous compared to everybody else, and bigger, stronger, packs a punch. A lot of the time he just kind of like walks people down, kind of like robotic like. So it would be interesting to see in that one. I think Plant could be quite far ahead on the cards, outboxing him, and then suddenly get caught. It's one of those sorts of things where Plant's got to be switched on for the entire 12 rounds, and you just see like his full repertoire of different things that he can do. And then Benavidez is just going to slowly but surely just got to have that belief that at one point in this fight he's going to connect, and it's going to be enough to put his lights out.
No, right. I mean, Benavidez just has crazy power too, but I mean, Plant. I feel like Plant really, after that Canelo loss, I feel, and then with this win and this knockout win, he does have some type of confidence now. I mean, he told Canelo in the ring, you could hear it on the audio, like, he says, I'm sad, that he lost. And it's like, what? I remember hearing that. I was like, he really say that? But that means he really, you have to respect somebody like Canelo. He's a great fighter. And the fact that Plant's saying that means he wanted his approval. And Canelo was like, no, you're a great fighter, man. You're a great fighter. And I think, those words really stuck with Plant. Like, I do think that, I still think Benavidez is a favorite against Plant, but I wouldn't count Plant out against Benavidez. And I think Plant fighting Canelo before Benavidez, even though he lost, you got to remember Plant was winning a lot of those rounds. If you talk about scoring, Plant was doing pretty well in terms of boxing until he just got knocked out. So I think the X factor for Plant is that he fought Canelo before and has that experience and gets to fight somebody like Benavidez. Because if they fought before and Plant didn't fight Canelo, then I think it would have been an easier time for Benavidez. But I think because Plant, like I said, has the experience of fighting Canelo, he leveled up his game, and it's going to make it a little bit tougher for Benavidez to really get that win. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. Plant's a very, very good boxer. And, that's why at times his fights can be so negative, because, he really nullifies what the opponent does. And then he's very, safety conscious, which leads to, boring fights. But hopefully, after that win against Dirrell and, the way that he put his lights out, maybe he's going to come forward a little bit more. And, maybe he's one of those fighters that's kind of like realizing that he has a bit of power now, or maybe he's, just getting older. He's got a bit of power now. But I think he's always going to be, safety first approach. So I think if anything's, it's going to be the later rounds in a Benavidez fight, which would hopefully come alive.
Yeah, but I'm definitely looking forward to that fight. Like Canelo said, he's like, how come they don't fight each other? They should fight each other first, and I'll fight the winner. So let them go at each other. And then I think Benavidez is rumored to be fighting. Is it Jose Uzcategui? Maybe in January or sometime December or something like that. I don't know. I get it. He needs to stay busy too, because likely if he wins, they're going to try to make the Plant fight next year. But we will see. We know how it works over there. Moving on. This past weekend. No, actually, this was on the same day. I forget we took last week. We didn't have an episode last week. Also on the 15th of October from the Rod Laver Arena. I hope I said that right. In Melbourne, Australia. Devin Haney and George Kambosos Jr. rematch for the undisputed 135-pound lightweight world titles. Well, it was like watching the first fight. It was the same thing. Haney, all that crap that people were talking about after the first fight, like why do we need to see the second fight when it's going to be the same thing? They were absolutely right. Haney cruises to unanimous decision win and retains his undisputed lightweight world titles. And now he still has a third fight under his contract, his option with Top Rank. And Lomachenko is fighting also this weekend, which we will touch on in a bit. Haney Lomachenko, assuming Lomachenko wins sometime in the spring of 2023. What do you think?
Yeah, combo Haney, Shakur, Loma. I think any combination of that I'd be immensely happy with. Maybe try and do the Loma fights first because he's a little bit older, and then let the two younger guys eventually face each other later down the line. Haney and Shakur. So great fights though, great fights, and then it's kind of like a pick 'em, really, isn't it? I think just be a very technical, very high Q, very boxing IQ. High fights, which should be great to watch. So that means we're probably not going to get him.
Probably not. But let's just say Lomachenko wins. Because think about it like this: if Haney has a third fight still with Top Rank, and they make the Lomachenko fight, is Top Rank going to be able to give Haney a rematch clause if Haney wants it? Or do you think in their contract they put, hey, there's a rematch clause for Kambosos here, but if you win both fights for the third fight, we control it? Like, does Haney now have the power, even just because he's under the 3-fight deal with Top Rank, to put a rematch clause into this third fight with whoever it is, which is most likely going to be Lomachenko? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure when you've got the titles, you can probably kind of do what you want. You can probably stick rematch clauses in, or just say like, well, if there's no rematch clause, then I'm not doing it. Unless it's a mandatory fight, then which there is the option of
even if it is a mandatory fight, we've seen rematch clauses.
Yeah, they'll still do it because of the payday, like the Usyk Joshua fight, right? That was a mandatory, but I think Usyk, the fact that they wanted a rematch, he was probably like, well, yeah, because that's the biggest fight in terms of money and in terms of accolades anyway. So why would I not want 2 bites at that?
Right. Exactly. So I think, you got Haney, who's undisputed right now, number 1 in the division. But Shakur is moving up to 135. And you still got Lomachenko. And I know a lot of people have counted out Lomachenko ever since he lost to Teofimo Lopez. But even when he lost to Teofimo Lopez, he didn't get outclassed. He lost. Lopez did beat him. But Lomachenko still showed that he has it. I still think that, and you let me know what you think, but I still think that Lomachenko might be the best lightweight in the world if you look at just pure skill. They all fight each other. Lomachenko, Haney, Haney, Tank, Ryan, Garcia. I think the last man standing, let's just say the last two standing, will be Shakur Stevenson and Lomachenko. What do you think?
No, definitely. I could see that. I mean, I'm a big fan of Lomachenko, just how different he is, how good he is, his amateurs, and then turning into the pros and, winning everything so fast. And he seems to have a huge group of people that hate him for that. And then he has a huge group of fans, which, kind of like adore him. There's no kind of like in between, it seems, with Lomachenko. But yeah, that Tio fight, was it just good tactics from Tio on the day? Was it, the fact that Lomachenko needed a shoulder injury and that's why he kind of lost like the first 5 or 6 rounds, and then he came back and himself won the last 5 or 6 rounds in that fight. So yeah, that honestly wouldn't surprise me if we saw Lomachenko back and he's already had a couple of fights, hasn't he, since his injury and his operation. If he came back and actually managed to beat Devin Haney, because I think he's that good. I think he lives the life. He doesn't seem like the sort of person which goes away and eats a lot or drinks a lot. I think he's very dedicated and trains really well. Got good tactics, good skill.
Yeah,
I think it's the only person that beats Loma is Father Time.
Not even Shakur.
But then I think it could be down to Father Time just due to diminishing skills and reactions, because his whole repertoire of skills really rely on the fast twitch, having fast feet, fast movements, fast reflexes. And I think obviously when Father Time decides it's it's your time to slow down, none of us get a choice, right? And I think it could be in a fight like that where we start to realize it, and then that's probably unfortunately to be the end of the roller coaster for Vasyl Lomachenko, who I love to watch.
Yeah. Hopefully we're not anywhere close to that yet. He can still give us a couple more years of solid competitive fights. Moving on, fight previews. This upcoming weekend, this Saturday, the 29th of October, from the Wembley Arena in London, England. Jordan Gill, 27-1-1, goes up against Kiko Martinez, 43-11-2 for the EBU European featherweight title. Martinez is one of those guys like who's that guy that he's been fighting with Top Rank a lot. He's gonna fight Lopez at 140. Pedraza. He's like Pedraza. There's a couple of them in boxing, but Kiko Martinez and Pedraza are, arguably two of the most common guys that are really just thrown in there because of their, they put up a good fight, but they're also the decent name to have on the resume. And like, okay, well, they fought a lot of the big names. If you can beat them, it's kind of like the next level, and then we'll go from there. Would you agree with that? Kiko Martinez is in that group.
Kiko Martinez may as well just be like a British fighter. The amount of cards that he's fought everybody. I think like Scott Quigg, Carl Frampton, obviously Galahad. Everybody.
He's like and Rosado too. He's like a Rosado. Like, yeah. All these divisions have their own fighter that's like that.
It just seems like to me like Kiko's been fighting since I started watching boxing. Like 20 years ago or something like that. He seems to have been around forever.
Wait a minute, you're only 23. What the hell?
Right? He's but he's good value for money, and at times, when it's when it all clicks and he feels good that day, he can swing. He can win some bouts where you don't expect him to. Look what he did to Kid Galahad. He shocked him.
Yeah, that's true.
Shocked him in a supposedly a gimme matchup. Gets himself the IBF world title and another big payday. And it's good to see that he's still around. It's rare if ever do we ever see Kiko get like massively knocked out in a really bad way. I don't think it's time for him to hang it up. I think he still plays a good B-side and at times can get the upset.
Yeah, he might have 11 losses, but that experience really comes in handy at certain times. Like you said, the Kid Galahad knockout, that definitely earned him some more significant fights throughout the rest of his career. Also, this upcoming Saturday from the Pachanga Arena in San Diego, California on DAZN. We were at the Chocolatito fight when it was there. We weren't, like we said, we talked about on that episode, we weren't really big fans of the arena, the staff there, and the arena staff. It was not a great experience. The arena is not really, it's kind of old, but San Diego has been clamoring for fights, and now it seems like it's pretty consistent. They're getting fights here. So for the people of San Diego, congratulations. Your Padres still suck. Beat my Dodgers, but whatever. They got eliminated by the Phillies. So now it's the Phillies. I don't know. We're talking baseball now, but I'm just glad the Padres lost. I'm a Dodgers fan. On the zone, Joseph Diaz Jr. of Golden Boy and William Zepeda, also of Golden Boy, are in the main event of this Saturday's card. This is a great matchup. I'm very, very excited for this matchup. Diaz isn't a knockout guy, but he can take a punch, and he's got great mechanics and great boxing ability, and he places his punches very well. But Zepeda has some knockout power and can fight. This is a great fight. Who wins?
It's very surprising that Jojo Diaz decided to take it, because
are you really surprised though? Like he's been showing that he's got the grit, man.
No, it's like, I'm not surprised in terms of, ever since Jojo had that, like, bad patch and then came back like a different guy, didn't he? Really, super confident, willing to get in there with anybody, even on, like a last minute notice, he'd stand in. Just in terms of business sense, because if he loses this, William Zepeda is known to people in the Southern California area. But that's about it. And if you're going to put yourself in there with someone that's, really, really tricky, you think it would be a bigger name for a bigger payday, because if he loses this, then you've not really put on a big performance for a big purse in a big fight. It's a lesser known name. I know that he's headlining it and Jojo's the A side, but I have a feeling this could be an upset.
An upset in terms of Zepeda
beats him. Zepeda beats him.
Would you really consider that an upset though? This is a pretty good fight.
And just in terms of, I think that Jojo is probably the A side. I think he's probably the A side on, he's the left side on all of them.
Right.
In terms of box rec, on the posters, he'll walk second. But I think for people from Southern California area, we've seen Zepeda kind of grow through here.
But it's also
stylistically, I don't think it's a good matchup for Jojo.
Right. I can see your point there. But Diaz, fought Haney. He lost to Haney, but he stepped in to fight Fortuna after Ryan backed out, beat Fortuna. Haney needed an opponent later on. Joseph Diaz popped in, gave a good account of himself. He still lost, but gave a good, solid effort, was competitive enough. And he's still a young guy. I think he's maybe like 28 years old. He still has a lot of years left in his career, assuming he keeps going. But I'm telling you, I think Diaz just has that grit. Like you said, he went through like a rough patch in his personal life and stuff, but he has that grit. And he's one of those fighters that if you grow up here in the LA area, he's been with Golden Boy for years. So you saw him at these fights here in the LA area all the time. You saw him grow up and get to his world title and all that, and I think he grew into that attitude where I'm gonna fight these guys, and obviously you want to win, but if he loses, he kind of rebounds and he comes back. And I think he sees Zepeda like, okay, well, this is an easy fight to make because we're both under the same team. If I beat this guy, since he's got a lot of hype behind him, then I'm back in a pretty decent position to get another significant fight at 135 pounds. Assuming Diaz, let's start with Diaz first. Assuming, that Jojo Diaz beats Zepeda, that puts him in line for a significant name at 135 pounds, right? Maybe Ryan, assuming that Tank Davis fight doesn't happen. I mean, they keep going back and forth and tweeting cryptic tweets against each other, and Ryan will tweet some stuff, and Tank Davis will tweet some stuff. It seems like Tank Davis every month tweets something and then he deletes it. But I feel like that's a part of the plan. He does it on purpose. But Jojo Diaz wants Ryan Garcia. Does he get a Ryan fight if he beats Zepeda? Or does Zepeda, if he wins, does he get a Ryan fight? Since they're both under the same promoter. I mean, what are we looking at here?
Sooner or later, I think we'll definitely see Jojo and Ryan. I think Ryan just being a big name, and then also Jojo being in the good graces. I think God, boy, love Jojo, for stepping in at last minute and kind of agreeing to fight anybody. Next, I'm not too sure. Seems like we may get the Davis Garcia fight, which would be great, and then maybe towards the end of next year we get Ryan against Jojo, and that would be a good fight. And that has to be in Southern California, right? Both of them are from this area, so it'd be kind of crazy if it went anywhere else. The only problem Jojo has is a lot of people are on the other side of the street. If you're looking at the the guys with the titles and the big names like Davis, Haney, Kambosos, Loma, Isaac Cruz, they're all at top rank or PBC. So that's the problem. I think.
No, right. Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it obviously it's more. I think Diaz taking the loss. Obviously, nobody wants to take a loss. It would still hurt him. But Zepeda taking the loss, I think might hurt him more in terms of his stock than it does to Diaz. Like, who, in terms of getting the victory, who gets the biggest rub out of that victory? Zepeda, because he's, like you said, he's more known in the Southern California region. And then if he beats a former world champion, Jojo Diaz, who's been in the ring with Devin Haney and these other bigger lightweights and decent lightweights.
Yeah, massively. If Zepeda wins, people will be kind of like, okay, like I knew who Jojo was because he's been in there. Who's this Zepeda guy? Whereas around here we've kind of known him for a while because he's been on some local shows. That's why I was saying in terms of business sense, this is a lose for Diaz, because Zepeda's a difficult guy, also an unknown guy, I would say, in most areas. People kind of expect Jojo to beat him. So if Jojo doesn't, then it's kind of like people are about, well, who the hell is this guy? And why is Jojo losing to him? That's why I thought, Jojo now at this point in his career would probably just be wanting to kind of work with and maintain, staying in there with, bigger fights with, bigger names for bigger paydays.
Right. No, yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm excited for this fight regardless. I think we should go straight to the picks here. Let's see. Because Zepeda has 23 KOs in his 26 wins.
I know where I'm going.
Diaz isn't a knockout guy. He's a boxer. But he places his punches well. He's got great punch placement. I don't think he's ever been knocked down. He could take a shot. You know what, man? I'm going Jojo decision.
I think Zepeda. I think just the fact that Jojo doesn't have that pop to back him off. And when you watch Zepeda, he's high output, throws a lot of punches with bad intentions, heavy-handed, like you said. I think it's bad matchmaking in terms of for Jojo, in terms of the business sense for him. And I think Zepeda's going to take him. I think he knocks him out late on. I think he just keeps wearing him down with constant pressure, and Jojo not been able to get him off because he hasn't really got too much pop. And Zepeda eventually stops him, KO or TKO. Referee might jump in just to save Jojo.
Yeah. See, I just can't see it because Diaz has never been, and it's not like Diaz is like, we're talking about father time here, like we did Lomachenko. He's 28 or something like that. He's fought the likes of, okay, I'm looking at his box right here. He fought Rakimov. He lost that majority decision, but Rakimov can punch. And Diaz was never in trouble with that in terms of power. He fought Fortuna, even though Fortuna was kind of like a smaller guy. Actually, he wasn't. They both kind of similar size. He beat him. He's fought Charles Huerta. Remember him?
From Maywood.
Yeah, and Huerta can punch, and Diaz beat him. He fought Gary Russell, even though he lost that fight a couple years ago. Who else? Andrew Cancio. He beat Cancio in 2016. He beat Jason Velez in 2016 as well. He beat Rene Alvarado.
That's a good win.
I'm just saying, like, he's proven. If they were like each 15-0, 12-0 or something, then okay, I'd probably agree with you. But that Diaz has proven that he could take shots. He doesn't have the pop. He doesn't have the pop to stop you, to knock you down, or to knock you out. But he has the punch placement enough that he's able to keep those fighters in kind of a hesitant position because of the placement of his punches. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh wow, that's a good shot. He didn't knock me down or he didn't knock me out, but like that was a great opening for him and he found it. You know what I mean? So you think like, oh wow, if he gets that again, like I might go down. Like you put that doubt in your mind. And Diaz has shown that he's good at that. So I'd be surprised if he goes down, and I'd be more surprised if he gets knocked out. I think Diaz gets a decision here. I just think the pedigree that Diaz has. It's a great fight. I still think it's a great fight. It's a pretty even matchup and stuff like that. But I think I'm tipping the edge to Diaz in a decision here. And you're going Zepeda knockout?
Yeah, I think he manages to stop him late. I just think his work rate, the amount of punches he throws, and he throws a lot of them. Once he kind of clips you and he kind of thinks that you're hurt, he dives on you and he throws a lot of punches, very heavy-handed. And I know Jojo is well schooled, and very rarely do you see Jojo caught kind of flush, just because he's been boxing for so many years. But I think today's not today's the day because it's not Saturday. But I think Saturday is the day that we may see Jojo either get caught, go down, or I think he may get the referee may jump on just because he's taking too many shots from Zepeda. It's a good fight though. It's definitely a 50-50 in terms of what you like as well, and there should be a good crowd there.
Yeah. I'm definitely looking forward to this fight. It's gonna be my fight of the weekend here. Also on the card, friend of the show, Alexis Lex Rocha, 20-1, goes up against Jesus Antonio Perez Campos. What a name, 24-3. I'm not too familiar with Campos. What are we looking at here?
I think it's a stay ready fight for him. I think that they've kind of given Rocha not a gimme fight because Gordon Boy never do that, but I think Campos will probably go some rounds with Rocha, and it's just a little run out for him because, unfortunately, for
and
Alexis,
he hurt his hand. Remember, he hurt his hand in his last fight at the Staples Center.
Yeah,
we talked to him backstage, and we asked him. He's like, "Oh yeah, I hurt my hand," and I thought, oh, okay, that's gonna put him out for a little bit, but it seems like it didn't. So it seems like it wasn't too bad. It healed up, and he was able to get back into it, right?
Yeah, and it's good to see him busy. Good to see him out. Quite a few times this year, and then hopefully sooner or later we'll see him in there with somebody of note. But the problem is 147-pound division, PBC have it on lockdown, so I think it's going to be hard for Golden Boy to get him in there with somebody. He's probably going to have to go down the mandatory route, and then.
No, yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. He's just going to have to work his way up to the mandatory route, or if it's just too much, he's gonna move up to 154. I mean,
I think he could with sides of him. Lex, especially now with he's getting older, you can see he's a lot more muscular than I think when me and you first saw him back in 2015, 2016.
Yeah. I think they're going to try as hard as they can to really get him a significant name at 147 before they tell him, like, okay, you can move up now. Because I'm sure he probably wants to, but I'm sure Golden Boy, at least in 2023, is going to try very, very hard to get him, like I said, a significant name. And if he gets that win, he gets that momentum going into the next division at 154. Because like you said, all the belts are tied up with PBC essentially, and Crawford's got, we'll talk about his plans, his upcoming plans. But if somebody like Virgil Ortiz, who's ahead in the line of somebody like Lex Rocha, if he can't, get a shot at any of these titles, which Spence and Crawford hold right now, then there's no hope for Rocha right now. So I think Rocha moves up to 154 without getting a title shot at 147. What do you think?
Maybe you've got. I think you're just kind of like putting your eggs in all one basket. That Crawford and Spence finally face each other, and then whoever wins that moves up anyway. Or they just get to the point where Crawford and Spence both say, you know what, like this isn't going to happen. Spence thinks I can't, keep making 147. I'm up to 154, and then 3 of the 4 belts become vacant because he decides to move up and not kind of waste part of his career waiting for Crawford.
Yeah. We will see. This is a good card, though. I'm really looking forward to this card on DAZN on Saturday. Also, this Saturday from the Madison Square Garden Theater in New York City on ESPN Plus, Vasily Lomachenko returns, as we've been talking about it, 16-2 as he goes up against Jermaine Ortiz, 16-0-1. Ortiz is a pretty tough task too. He's undefeated. Lomachenko, I think he's also proven like Diaz, where he has that grit. He won a world title within his first 3-4 fights or something, 5 fights in the pros, and he has that extensive amateur record. And now he's coming back after a pretty long layoff. I know he was in his country, in the Ukraine and all that, involved in the conflict over there. But he's back. The Matrix seems like it's coming back. Are we going to see any ring rust, or are we going to see the exact same Lomachenko that we've been seeing for years?
No, I think it may take him a couple of rounds, but that's usual of Lomachenko, right? The old downloading the data phrase that people like to use when Lomachenko's in the ring. I think he always kind of starts slow. He kind of assesses what you're doing, looks to negate that, and build his game plan around that. So if you start slow, I'm sure people will say it's ring rust, but same old Vasil, I think. I think he'll win. I'm obviously a big fan of him, like I said earlier in the show. So I think he wins, and then hopefully we see him in there with Devin Haney or Shakur Stevenson. Get him in a few more big fights whilst we can until he decides to retire, because it's been kind of a quiet really for him over the last couple of years.
He's waiting for Shakur, or not Shakur, for Devin Haney. That's what Top Rank is hoping for sometime next year, maybe in the first quarter next year. That's the plan, right?
Yeah, I mean, Bob Arum loves Lomachenko, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, he's a big fan.
Big fan of him. So I'm sure that if that's what Lomachenko wants, then I'm sure that's what they'll do. The last fight on that Top Rank contract for Haney, get him in there against Lomachenko, and that'll be an unbelievable fight.
Yeah. Haney Lomachenko fight would be a very good fight. Very, very, very technical. And I mean, Lomachenko has proven to be able to stop guys, so there's always that threat as well from him. Moving on, news and notes of this week's episode of The Last Round. The British Boxing Board of Control announced this week, I believe. Yeah, this week, that, quote, allegations of misconduct, unquote, against welterweight contender Conor Benn were upheld at a Friday hearing. Ben was slated to fight Chris Eubank Jr. earlier this month, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, but the event was scrapped after the Boxing Board of Control refused to sanction the catchweight bout following Ben's positive test for the performance-enhancing drug clomiphene. I hope I said it right. A drug that's often used to boost testosterone levels. According to the British Boxing Board of Control, Conor Benn voluntarily relinquished his boxing license on the morning of the hearing, which he was legally represented at. What's the update here? Did we get a B sample back yet?
I don't think they've come out with that, but reading that everywhere today.
If we didn't get a Dylan White B sample, or Dylan White B sample. What's the common denominator here? Eddie Hearn Matchroom. We're not going to get a Conor Benn B sample, right?
No, I'm sure we won't hear anything unless they decide to. Because Conor Benn decides to kind of do what TJ Dillashaw did over at the UFC and just go, you know what, I'm just going to do the right thing, I guess, and just be like, put my hands up and say, yeah, I fucked up. It was going to be a big fight. It was going to be a big payday. I had a lot riding on this. I tried to, get an edge over my opponent, and I decided to, use some cycle of drugs to aid me in this. And I got caught. Like, my bad. I'll take my punishment, and I'll come back in a year, 2 years. Whatever happens, it would be refreshing for someone in boxing to do that, like they did in the UFC, instead of blaming like supplements and different types of medication or stuff like that. So it looks like
I don't know. I feel like
boxing
fans. I feel like boxing fans are a little bit more ruthless than UFC fans.
I mean, like I said 2 weeks ago when we did the show, for people to think that it's not, rife in the sport, then I think it's it's kind of foolish in my opinion, because like I said last time, you go to the gym and a lot of people in the gym are doing it just for vanity or health reasons or stuff like that. So it's to think that people aren't going to do it who are trying to earn a living, and it's very small margins between winning or losing. So I'm sure that they do. I'm sure most sports do.
Yeah. I don't know. I still hope, regardless, silver lining here is that we see a Chris Eubank Jr. Conor Benn fight sometime next year. I still think that it's on the table for both of them, but is there a chance that we don't see it at all because of this issue?
Him relinquishing his boxing license doesn't look good, right? It's pretty much an admission of guilt, I think. Maybe he's wondering or thinking to himself that, maybe it's just better if I just disappear for a bit and, he does some sort of ban and then comes back. But, Chris Eubank Jr., I think, is what, like 32, 33, depending on what sort of ban, Conor Benn gets. I think will probably be the deciding factor of whether we see it or not.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. But I mean, I think it's also the best course of action he can do to relinquish his boxing license in the UK, because it kind of starts the clock in terms of like, okay, if he tried to fight this in a type of like legal court or any type of administrative court over there in the UK and held on to his license while they go through the process and stuff, and all these resources are spent and wasted and all that stuff to try to go through this process and hearing, and he ends up losing it anyways, they take it away, then that discipline that they impose on him, or they're not going to look favorably on him for dragging them through that whole process. So I think him relinquishing it is kind of saying, okay, let's just start the clock now. Look, I voluntarily relinquished it. It's kind of an implication of guilt in a sense, even though he didn't really say he's guilty. It's kind of like a no contest plea here in the United States, right? So it kind of starts the clock where maybe a couple months later, the first quarter of next year, maybe the British Board of Boxing Control is like, okay, you're reinstated, you can fight. Oh, let's make the Chris Eubank fight.
I wonder if he's doing like a Jarrell Miller thing where, well, during Miller tested positive before the Joshua fight, he wasn't technically banned because he wasn't ever licensed.
That's true.
So I wonder if Ben's thinking, well, if I relinquish it, you technically can't ban me because I'm not a licensed fighter anyway.
Maybe.
I wonder if it's some type of loophole that his lawyers said, like, hey, go and relinquish it on the first day.
Yeah.
How can they ban you when you're not licensed?
That's true. Yeah. Or maybe they. Yeah, that's true. Maybe that's a loophole. I don't know. What did George Kambosos say in that first fight against Devin Haney?
Art of War, wasn't it?
The Art of War, right? Maybe that's it. He's doing the same thing. Maybe it's something like that.
Deception.
Yeah. So we will see as that continues to be unfolded and more information is released. And also, if you haven't heard, Tyson Fury is fighting once again against Derek Chisora. He's not fighting against Usyk or Wilder again or Anthony Joshua or anything like that. I think we all knew those fights were going to happen. I never thought that the AJ fight was going to happen, but at least not this year. But it looks like he's going to be fighting Derek Chisora again in North London on December 3rd. Frank Warren did say that Fury will remain fit and ready for a fight against Usyk next year. So, it is what it is. I think he just wants to stay busy, and I think we will see an undisputed fight sometime next year between him and Usyk, and that's the fight that we're really all looking forward to. Welterweight title holder Terence Crawford and David Avanesian have signed contracts for a pay-per-view fight on December 10th at the CHI Health Center in Omaha, Nebraska, where Crawford is from, according to ESPN. The fight will be available on a new platform, a new player in the boxing world, BLK Prime, a streaming service, for $39.95, according to ESPN as well. Reportedly, Crawford, who's 38-0 with 29 KOs, will earn a career-high 8-figure payday, according to sources at ESPN. Obviously, the Spence fight has been negotiated or, kind of reported here and there. It didn't happen. One side says one thing. Crawford's side hasn't really said anything. It's all been a lot of PBC, Twitter accounts and, interviews and stuff, kind of leaking information to certain journalists. So, we think, we weren't there. We weren't there for negotiations. We don't know what happened. Obviously, Crawford felt that the deal wasn't right for him, so he made this fight and took it. So that means we're probably going to see Spence Thurman, maybe Spence Stanionis. I mean, I don't know, but we're not going to get Spence Crawford this year. Hopefully we get it next year, but these guys are older. They've been talking about moving up to 154 pounds. And the more time that passes, the more time that we don't see them fight at least at 147 pounds. We could still see them at 154, but David Avanesian and then Adrian Broner announced this week as well that he has signed to BLK Prime, which, I know Broner's been with PBC Al Heyman for a while, and he's kind of like all over the place, but he said he's no longer affiliated with PBC. Now he's with BLK Prime. I mean, and then they're like I mentioned earlier a couple minutes ago, they're paying reportedly they're paying Crawford a very, very high guarantee or a 8-figure. Where's that money coming from? I know some people did some digging on boxing Twitter, and the company that owns that streaming service, BLK Prime, is like an investment company, I believe, a portfolio company based in California. So maybe they have the money, but it's going to be difficult to recuperate that with somebody like Crawford. Crawford's not a proven draw on pay-per-view. Excellent fighter. But in terms of financial backing here, like Bob Arum has been saying, maybe Bob Arum is right. All this stuff has been happening, but obviously we're not getting Spence Crawford, which is unfortunate. We keep hearing conflicting stories, it's mostly pro PBC saying that it was Crawford's fault. We don't know. Even these journalists who are saying, like, sources tell us, like, we don't even know if that's true or not. We don't know if that's true. Unless there was something who was involved in the negotiations, who talks. Maybe we'll have Crawford talk as it gets closer to his fight. He'll kind of spill the beans a little bit. And, maybe that'll give us something. But everybody's not going to make themselves look bad. They're going to talk in support of their position. But we weren't there. We were not there. So we're all just speculating here to see whose fault this was. Because if Crawford made this fight and announced it and it's official, signed contracts most likely, I think, it's been announced already. So it's all a formal fight. Then Crawford felt that the deal they were offering him at PBC and Al Heyman wasn't fair enough from his understanding. So he had this backup plan, and he took it. Also, news that dropped this week. I hope I said this right. Kazuto Ioka and Joshua Franco have agreed to terms reportedly for a 115-pound title unification on December 31st in Japan, according to ESPN. Ioka holds the WBO junior bantamweight title, while Franco was elevated by the WBA in August after its super champion Juan Francisco Estrada relinquished his belt. Ioka is a 33-year-old who fights out of Tokyo, Japan, and he won the title with a split decision victory over Donnie Nietes in 2018. He has made just 5 successful defenses since winning that title. Most recently, a unanimous decision win over Nietes in a July rematch, which Ioka definitely left no doubt with that win. Here you go. Got to give it to this Robert Garcia camp. Franco traveling to Japan for a New Year's Eve, essentially a New Year's fight over there. He's going to enemy territory. Got to give it to him. These Robert Garcia fighters, and not just his fighters. There's a lot of fighters like that, but traveling over there. I mean, it's likely if they would have waited maybe until next year, maybe Ioka would have came to the United States, right? But what do you think?
Yeah, all respect to him. Franco's had some difficult fights over the last couple of years, and it's great to see him going abroad and kind of tasting that. I think all fighters should do. I think it's it's good for them. When people say like the world champion, I think it's good when they actually do go to other countries to defend against other people in their territory. And all look to him. That's a difficult fight. Ioka is a great champion, so that's going to be a good fight to watch and gives us all something to watch New Year's Eve.
Absolutely. These New Year's Eve fights are becoming very common, mostly in Japan, actually. And also, reports have said that Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall have agreed to terms for a February 4th rematch in the UK for Josh Taylor's WBO Junior Welterweight Championship. Josh Taylor retained his 440-pound titles via controversial split decision when he faced Catterall earlier this year in 2022 in February in Scotland, which was, like I said, very controversial, even though Taylor took the victory. Taylor, after that fight, had planned to move up to 147 pounds, but reversed course following a public outcry over the judging. I remember that stuff. So he even said he received death threats. That's unfortunate. That sucks. But maybe, obviously it affected him enough to say, you know what, fine, I'll stay at 140. Hopefully it doesn't affect his health, because if he's already saying, because he's a big guy. He's a big guy for 140. And if he's saying, fine, I'll stay at 140 for one more fight just to prove you guys wrong, hopefully it doesn't, affect his health, or it's not a bad decision, I mean, who wins this rematch? What do you think?
Oh, this is a tricky one, because going into the first fight, I was thinking, I was all over Josh Taylor due to his recent performances, but then Jack Catterall won that relatively easy from what I can remember. So, man,
it's a tough one, huh?
Yeah,
I think Taylor comes back stronger and leaves no doubt.
But he's changed trainer as well, hasn't he? He left Ben Davidson.
I know. That's right. Yeah. Good point. I think Taylor comes back and leaves no doubt. I really do.
It's hard, because if you can only really go off the last performance, you'd have to go Catterall. But then, after I saw the documentary, I saw how hard it was for for Josh to make weight. So was it just a weight thing? Not having a good relationship, or it's not working with Ben Davidson. Oh. But yeah, has to be closer to the time. But I think maybe Jack Catterall. Oh,
all right. Well, as of right now, we're on the different sides of the street here, so we will see as we get closer. But once again, guys, thank you again for listening to this week's episode of the Last Round podcast. We apologize, as I mentioned, for last week. We were not here to deliver your weekly episodic content of the Last Round, but we're here doubling up this week with several news bites and previews and reviews. But as we sign off, as we always do every week, Mike, go ahead and let them know where they can find us and follow us.
At the Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter. And be sure to join us next week, where we'll be talking about all the fights we just spoke about, and I'll be at the Jojo Diaz and Zepeda fight.
So if you see Mike down there, say hi. Tell him you guys want to be guest on the Last round. So once again, for my co-host Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is the last round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is the Last Round Podcast.